What is mythology? We have two learning targets for today's lesson. The first one is I understand the definition of mythology, and the second one, I can identify the characteristics of a myth. I want you to start by getting out a piece of paper or opening a Google Doc or just thinking. It doesn't really matter, but I want you to think about what is mythology. So I'm going to give you some time to come up with an answer to our question, what is mythology? And yes, I want you to pause the video and take about 2 minutes to come up with an answer. Yes, you really do have to pause the video. Now would be a great time. Alright, so now that you've had some time to come up with an answer to our question, what is mythology? Let's actually talk about what mythology is. And mythology is the study of myths. And myths are stories about supernatural beings. In early times, they were handed down orally from one generation to another. So they weren't handwritten like our stories are today. Instead, a grandma or a grandpa would tell the story to the grandchild, and then that grandchild would tell the story to his kids, and his kids would tell it to their kids, and so on. And eventually, they did get written down, and that's why we can read the myths and other stories that have been passed down orally. But way back when, in ancient times, stories were handed down orally. When you are reading a myth, it is going to try to explain 3 overlying topics. And the first topic is nature. And within this story, if you're reading one that has to do with nature, it's going to try to answer the questions like, where did Earth come from? Or the heavens, the sun, the moon, the stars, etc. Seasons, climate, why do we have those things? It's going to try to explain geography or the oceans or the mountains. So that's the first topic in mythology. The second topic that a myth might try to explain is man. And that just means people in general. Man, woman, people. So where did man come from? What was his life like? His birth, growth, his death? What were his victories? Was he in battle? Did he do great things in battle? What was his defeats? How did he die? What was his end? Did he have rewards? Did he have punishments? So that is our topic 2 that myths try to tackle is man. And the last topic that myths try to tackle are gods. So they're going to talk about where did the gods come from. They're going to talk about how many gods there are. They're going to talk about what their gods' jobs were, what they were in charge of, what were the roles of the gods. Did they have any powers? Did they have any weaknesses? So every myth tries to tackle one of those 3 topics. It's either nature, man, or gods. And they might mix a few together, but those are the 3 big topics that you're going to see throughout all myths. So now that we've kind of gone over the big 3 topics that you will see in myths, let's break down what a myth is even more so you understand all the characteristics of a myth. First of all, myths are a special kind of story, and they are created to give values to people, places, and things, and they just respond to our need for reassurance and meaning in the universe. That's why those 3 big topics try to answer certain questions, because we need reassurance and we want to know the meaning of things in this universe. Myths are also traditional tales of particular people like Indians, Egyptians, Greeks, Romans. All different types of groups of people have their own mythology and their own myths and their own stories, and yet they might still be similar to one another. They are different because they're connected with each other's religious beliefs and rituals. So the Greeks aren't going to have the same religious beliefs and rituals as the Indians, and that's what separates their stories. When the stories are talking about the rituals that are performed in public, it is said to believe that they invoke a type of magic that would aid the growth of crops and promote stability in the land. Out of these rituals came songs and poems and stories that helped to explain how people acquired basic things like simple speech, fire, grain, wine, oil, honey, agriculture, metalwork, and many, many, many more things. While myths attempt to explain how those things are acquired, myths also try to explain other things, like certain customs or practice of a human society or a natural process. In their imaginations, the Greeks of ancient times saw a man driving across the heavens in a chariot drawn by fiery horses. When evening came, he dipped into the western ocean, and while he slept, he was carried back eastward along the earth's northern rim in a golden boat shaped like a bowl. Today, people also give human characters to non-human objects. That's what we call personification. That goes back to our lesson on literary elements. Personification, giving human characteristics to non-human objects. And you're going to see that happen a lot in myths when you are reading. So today you might hear someone tell you when they're talking about the sunset, now he's going down, now his feet, now his body, now the top of his head. Obviously, the sun doesn't have feet or a body or his head, but that helps explain to a little child how the sun sets. Myths are also mixtures of morals, poetry, and history that are used to teach humans proper behavior. Mythical gods, or the higher powers, with all their own shortcomings, had certain standards, rules, and expectations for mortal men and women, and they must show hospitality to strangers, and they must keep pride within reasonable bounds. In the eyes of the gods, excessive pride was the worst offense and deserved the worst punishment. So parents would tell children these stories in a way to help teach them about how they should act, the proper behavior, especially in certain situations. Like, how would you act when you're out? How would you act at home? So these stories also help to teach proper behavior. And then myths are also stories about certain characters. So within the stories, you'll have gods and goddesses and men and women and heroes. Myths really like their heroes. And they're going to tell the stories of their adventures and triumphs and tragedies and devotions and vengeance, provided a history of the beliefs of ancient people as they were passed down by storytellers from generation to generation. So this was a way to pass down their history and their beliefs from one person to another. So like the grandparent telling the child, and then the child telling their children, and that child telling their children, and so on. In today's society, people are also using myths to tell stories of heroes. Like, there's a story about George Washington, and it's actually a myth, and this is when it talks about the cherry tree, and the event never actually happened, spoiler alert, but it was used to illustrate a more truth about young George's character. So it helped create him as a hero. That is a myth. It didn't actually happen. Got that? Didn't happen. So myths are often created around real life famous Americans just to make them seem larger than life and make them look like better heroes. Some of our American myths include the stories of Paul Bunyan and John Henry and the little engine that could, which demonstrated that great things can be accomplished through self-confidence. In the ancient myths, gods are immortal, meaning that they can never die, and they're going to reach out and touch the lives of mortal humans, even threatening and invading them at times. The relationships between gods and men are always dangerous, always risky, but they are relationships that make the study of history and literature more interesting and fun.